Hello and welcome back. In this video we pick up the toolbox restoration with some bondo, primer, and paint and putting back on the accessories. We're starting out with some bondo application here, and this is the first time I've ever worked with it in this capacity. And I learned pretty quickly that a little goes a long way and not to overdo it. So this just shows the mixing process. You use the part 1 and part 2 and then get them mixed to a consistency that matches the color of those applicators, which I will link in the description. I do the mixing on blue tape as I found that it's an easy cleanup after it dries. You can just peel the tape off your work surface. That works with epoxy, any type of glues. So I decided to use it here with the bondo as well. Now just applying it to the surfaces that had dings and dips in it. And filling that hole there that had no purpose. This toolbox was pretty scratched up and damaged, and there was a lot of deep dings. So this, I applied a big area to fill those in. And I took the same approach as I would with drywall, because I've never worked with bondo. Just filling in the areas and then contouring that around probably 2 or 3 inches around every scratch. Just so after you sand, it takes it down to a relatively smooth surface. Now for the interest of time in this video, I've only shown one application of this bondo, but in reality, I would go through, apply it, sand, come back and check the area, fill any small voids or areas I missed, and repeated that process 2 or 3 times until I had a relatively flat coat. Here's just showing the sanding. One of the steps just removes the bulk of it. And I go through with different grits of hand sanding to really fine tune those edges and feather everything out. I'm also using this heavy primer that also is gap filling to fill any of the small voids that I may have missed with the bondo. This primer usually takes care of it from what I've seen. And also for the interest of time, I've edited this down substantially to show only one coat, when in reality there was many. After this, you can see those scratches in there. This was the time when I'd go back through with bondo and recoat and find any of those spots that I'd missed. The inside, for as beat up as it looks, actually filled in pretty well with very minimal work. Most of it was surface level rust and dings that filled pretty easily and turned out very nice. Whereas most of the damage was on the exterior of the toolbox. It helped too that these surfaces, the horizontal surfaces, would all be getting covered with a mesh that I wasn't too concerned with hiding the crimes of poor paint. Same thing with hitting the boxes, went through with some primer on them. The red on the bottom and sides of the original coat was in very good shape, so I did not bother to take it off. There's very few dings, and most of these areas would not be seen, so I did not get too fussy with cleaning them up ahead of time. Same with the insides of the boxes. They'll receive that toolbox mesh, so the bottoms will be hidden. So I did not get too concerned with the full coverage or a perfect finish on the lower side. Here's after a few coats of primer, topped off with bondo on those rough areas. You can see where I had to go back in and sand to fix some of the spots that I had missed originally. It's a very tedious process going back and forth with the bondo and paint. And in the end, I didn't achieve a perfect mirror finish, but it was much better than before. And I learned a lot in the process, which is the whole reason we do this. But each coat of primer and paint got a little flatter and flatter, and I am happy with the final result. There's also a saying I heard that reminds me of this. What makes a good metal worker from a poor one is thick paint. And that's also true in this case with that primer. It made a big difference. Here's another view after getting a little smoother every time. Now coming in with the final coat. I chose blue. This is a Craftsman blue, and it matches some of the other projects I've done in the shop. Matches my original Craftsman toolbox and a table saw that I refinished. I like it as opposed to the red. It's a little different. It's not as popular anymore, and I like to have some variety. You can see they're starting to run out in that can, so I switched to a fresh one so you don't get those blotches of paint, just to keep it more consistent. And in between all of these coats, I had mentioned light sand with 320 or higher, just enough to scuff the surface and knock out any of the dust or residue from the air that's settled into the paint. And it just gives a more consistent finish as you move along. See Maze, the shop dog in the back there, going out with her mom. This project went through quite a bit of paint. I think in terms of the blue, I used 5 or 6 cans over a period of a few days to coat everything. And the primer right around the same. Which isn't always the case, but the deterioration and problems I had with refinishing this caused to use a little more than normal. The drawers finished very well. With being so undamaged, they did finish a lot easier than the rest of the toolbox, the body. And as most of those surfaces won't be seen, I wasn't overly concerned. I was more concerned with getting everything covered and protected from rust. Now we're jumping to some Evaporats to clean up the handles. You can see how rough those surfaces are, rusty. This Evaporats is amazing. It's non-toxic. Soak it in there for a few days, and it comes out basically clear right off the gate. And then just finishing with either by hand or with a wire brush. This was right out of there, wiped with just a cloth in this instance to remove all that surface rust. Now reattaching the handles with some rivets. This pop rivet gun is a great tool, and it makes it easier for these projects to just take the handles off so you're not painting around these surfaces, and it allows you to finish things better than you would if you had to tape everything off. And installing them is as easy as that, having the correct size hole, popping them in, and they finish nicely on the inside there. I'll put a link to this tool in the description as well. Reattaching the original logo here. I didn't do anything to refinish it. I left it original just because I like the look. Kind of shows the age of the toolbox, and the original serial number is still visible on there. Now here's the tool liners going in. It's just measuring for each box individually, squaring everything off and getting a nice cut. I usually oversize it on the first go around, and then I'll come back through and trim to get a nice tight fit. And this replaced that paper that was in there from before that was probably really original, 30 years or so. This padding's a little thicker, protects your tools, protects the boxes, keeps things from sliding around, and just gives a nicer look. Now as I mentioned in my previous video, the key was, and the whole mechanism was damaged and missing. I don't know where the original key was, so I just replaced the whole unit with one that actually works. This is how it locks and latches. And reinstalling the handles on the side in the same method with that pop rivet gun. I tried to find identical hole patterns, but I couldn't find one exactly. This one was very close and covered the original holes, which was my main concern. And they're a similar look, but a little more heavy duty. And I made sure to use as large of rivets as I could to make sure that they did not pull off again. After thoroughly cleaning the slides and glides, reinstalling them back into the toolbox, I put some silicone grease in there, which is not supposed to attract dust. I haven't previously used it, but I will see how it works in this application. And I'm popping the drawers back in. And the final touch, I got my logo here. I don't know what was previously in this rivet spot. It's been missing for as long as I can remember, so I thought this would be a nice change. So I ordered this on Amazon.com and customize it with my name. And I'll install it with slightly different holes with that same pop rivet gun. Just checking to make sure I'm square and level there off that top surface. And that's it, the final step. Here's the final toolbox with a few tools in it and a locking mechanism that actually works now. This was a very fun project and I learned a lot, as always, which is the main goal. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see next.